Your cognitive bandwidth is being hijacked by a $743 bank balance and $18,400 in student debt, transforming every daily decision into a high-stakes calculation of survival arithmetic. At this altitude, scarcity is not a lack of resources, but an atmospheric pressure that warps your identity, turning a $5,200 raise into an invisible ripple against a current that constantly pulls you back to zero. Picture this. You are staring at a phone screen in a dark room at exactly 2:17 in the morning. A notification just popped up because a gas station pump rejected your card. And that is how you realize the number staring back at you is $743. That is not a bill you have to pay. It is the entirety of your existence. You are 24 years old, and your financial skeletal structure consists of $18,400 in student loans and a $2,900 credit card balance, where you are just throwing minimum payments into a black hole. Outside, your car has 140,000 miles on the odometer. It needs a $340 timing belt, but you have ignored that ticking clock for 6 weeks because that specific amount of money simply does not exist in your universe right now. You tell yourself this is not a crisis. You are not on the street, and you're not starving, at least not in the way people talk about in documentaries. But you're caught in a gravitational pull that feels like walking through deep water, where every step is a struggle against a force that wants to keep you stationary. This is the reality of living with zero margin. When the transmission slips, or a medical bill shows up in the mail, or your roommate suddenly gives you 30 days notice before moving out, it is like someone reached out and slapped a giant reset button on your life. Each of these events is a tidal wave that sweeps away any tiny sandcastle of progress you try to build. This is what survival actually feels like. It is not some cinematic explosion. It is just a series of cold, hard equations where the variables are always stacked against you. The math becomes your heartbeat. It pulses underneath every single interaction. When a friend asks you to grab a coffee, or you get a text about a group dinner, or someone says, let us just split an Uber, your brain is already running a background check on your bank account before you can even form a smile. You've been doing this mental gymnastics for so long that you do not even realize it has become your default OS. It is like being trapped in a room with no oxygen. You do not think about the air until it starts to run out, and for you, money has become the very air you breathe. It is not a tool anymore. It is an inescapable environment. Have you ever felt like your brain was being reshaped by stress? That is what scarcity does. It acts like a slow-burning fire that bends your logic until everything you thought was straight is now permanently crooked. Then you get what looks like a lifeline, a $5,200 annual raise. On paper, it sounds great, but after the tax man takes his cut, you are looking at exactly $294 extra a month. You feel the relief for maybe 11 days. Then reality catches up. Your landlord decides your rent is now $150 higher. Your car insurance premium renews at a higher rate. Suddenly, your phone company sneaks a $22 unauthorized charge onto your bill. You spend 40 minutes of your life on hold just to get that money back. And while you win the argument, you realize those 40 minutes are gone forever, traded for the price of a couple of pizzas. The $294 has completely evaporated before you could even hold it. So you double down. You cancel every subscription you have. You spend 11 straight weeks eating the exact same meal prep made from the same 4 cheap ingredients every single Sunday. You become a ghost to your friends at the bar. You manage to scrape together a $400 deposit into a savings account and swear you will not touch it. 7 weeks pass, and you are feeling proud because that balance has grown to $1,100. Then, the car finally gives up. The timing belt snaps, it takes the entire engine down with it, and the mechanic hands you a $1,600 estimate. Just like that, you drain the $1,100, put the $500 remaining balance back on the credit card, and you are standing right back at the starting line. This is not because you failed. This is because living at level 0 is like trying to swim up a waterfall. The current is always there, pushing you down, waiting for you to get tired. Are you tired of swimming yet? Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever felt like you were just running in place, and leave a comment below telling me about the last time an unexpected bill reset your progress. Hit the bell so you do not miss the next part of this breakdown. Imagine the weight of the world finally lifting not with a bang, but with a silent click on a Thursday in February. That is when you push the final payment through, watching the screen flicker as your balance hits exactly zero. It took 16 months of grueling focus, chipping away with $180 here, $230 there, and even $310 whenever you could find the air to breathe. You take a screenshot of that beautiful, empty debt row. You do not share it on Instagram or text it to your friends because nobody in your circles truly grasps the gravity of that zero. To them, it is just the end of a bill. To you, it is the birth of agency. For the first time in your life, your money is not a predator chasing you down an alley. It is a steering wheel in your hands. You have transitioned from being a passenger in a sinking ship to the captain of your own vessel. How many of you have hit that send button on a final payment? Drop a comment below and tell me how that moment felt. By the time you hit 27, your internal compass has completely recalibrated. You have stopped asking if you can afford to live another week and started asking what the price of the exit door looks like. That number is $10,000. You have never seen 5 figures in your own name before, not even in your wildest dreams. On the day the transfer clears, you find yourself logging into your banking app 3 separate times. It is not that you think the bank is lying. It is that your identity is undergoing a massive software update. Crossing into the 5-figure territory is like stepping onto a new continent where the laws of physics are different. You were a person who scrambled to manage a crisis. Now, you are a person who possesses capital. You feel this quiet, steady hum in the background of your life. It is the sound of the engine finally running in your favor. To keep it running, you practice a level of discipline that borders on a spiritual vow. You ignore the siren song of a car upgrade. You skip the luxury vacation, and you look at that laptop you've been obsessively researching for 9 months, and you simply say no. The strategy shifts from surviving a storm to building a fortress. You are not watching influencers anymore. You are reading dense, heavy texts on tax structures, index funds, and the mechanics of compound interest. You set up a Roth IRA and start putting in $200 a month. At first, it feels almost comical, like trying to fill a swimming pool with a teaspoon. You think $200 cannot possibly move the needle on your future, but you will realize later just how incredibly wrong that assumption is. This leads us to the second rule of this game. Moving from nothing to $10,000 is a mental breakthrough, but moving from $10,000 to $100,000 is purely about the architecture of your habits. One is a ghost you have to exorcise. The other is a machine you have to maintain. If you're learning something new about wealth building right now, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you can stay ahead of the curve. Fast forward and you are pulling in $74,000 a year. Your net worth has climbed to $52,000, strategically divided between a brokerage account, that Roth IRA, and a rock-solid emergency fund that covers 5 months of your life. You're maxing out your 401k with a surgical precision that makes your friends crack jokes about your frugality. They call you the accountant of the group, and while they're laughing, you know their jokes are just a reaction to a level of focus they do not yet understand. One night, around 11:30 p.m., you open a spreadsheet to map out the next 40 years of your existence. You plug in a conservative 7% annual return, adjusted for inflation, and factor in your current savings rate and expected raises. You look at the final cell in that sheet, and for the first time, you do not feel panic. The math is not screaming at you anymore. It is telling you that, on paper and in reality, your future is finally under control. It is enough. It is technically, mathematically, on paper, fine. Your salary is a glass ceiling painted to look like a solid marble floor. You think you're standing on something firm, but the moment you run the numbers with cold, surgical honesty, you realize you're just trapped in a high-security vault with a very pretty view. The spreadsheet doesn't lie. It shows a perfectly disciplined, perfectly patient path that leads you to a modest, quiet exit at age 67. If that realization makes your stomach churn, good. That discomfort is the only thing that will keep you from falling into the stability trap. Most people spend their lives becoming world-class experts at not losing, but they never actually start building. They follow the rules and realize too late that the reward for being a good soldier is just a slightly nicer cage. What are you going to do with that realization? Are you going to keep walking the path or start digging a tunnel? Smash that like button if you've ever looked at your career trajectory and realized the finish line wasn't what you were promised. So you start digging. It's a side project on Saturday mornings. You don't call it business yet. It's just a tiny experiment. At first, it spits out $500 a month. Then it hits $1,100. Soon, it's generating $2,300 every single month. But here is the secret. You keep your mouth shut. You don't buy a new watch. You don't throw a party. You don't upgrade the car or change your meal prep. For 15 months, every single dollar that comes out of that mechanism goes right back into its gears. You become a ghost to the world of consumption. You turn down a group getaway to Portugal. You skip a bachelor party in Austin that would have drained $850 from your momentum. Because you stayed disciplined, your net worth rockets past $100,000, then $130,000. Suddenly, the gap between your reality and the one dictated by your salary starts to yawn wide open. You aren't just feeling it in your bank account. You're feeling it in your perception of time. Every hour spent on a task that doesn't compound starts to feel like grit in a high-performance engine. It's not a moral failure to work for a wage. It's just strategic friction. You are officially evolving into a machine operator. One day, you look at your accounts and realize your investments have printed $5,800 in a single calendar year without you lifting a finger. Read that again. $5,800. That's more than some people earn in a quarter, and it happened while you were dreaming, while you were at your desk, while you were living your life. This is the exact moment you stop viewing an asset as a vocabulary word and start seeing it as a physical mechanism. It's a pump that moves wealth into your life independent of your presence. You realize you don't just want money. You want a fleet of these mechanisms. Have you ever seen your money work harder than you did? Leave a comment, and the shift is final now. You stop calculating how much you can earn and start obsessing over how many things can earn on your behalf. By age 34, you take the leap. You put $58,000 down on a duplex and rent out both units. After the mortgage, the insurance, the taxes, and a conservative reserve for maintenance, you're netting $720 a month. That $720 isn't going to buy you a private island, but it is a proof of concept that changes everything. It's the moment your identity shifts from a wage earner to an owner. You now understand assets from the inside out. You see leverage not as an abstract concept from textbook, but as a hydraulic force you are actively operating. This is why the people who truly escape the system do it through property and equity. It's because ownership is the only mechanism that transforms the pain of sacrifice into a calculated trade rather than a mandatory toll. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss the next stage of the journey. Describe the life of a ghost. At 35, you have carved out a net worth of $230,000. You are technically winning, but you haven't changed your skin. You still sit behind the wheel of that same old car, and your life looks like a contradiction. You have a rental property quietly ticking over, a brokerage account holding $91,000, and a business that injects $4,100 into your world every single month. Yet, you are invisible. The people around you look at your life and draft entire stories that are completely wrong. Some think you are struggling. Others think you are hiding a gold mine. You don't bother to fix their vision. Why would you? You have discovered that when you hit this level of capital, people stop being mirrors and start being distorted lenses. They either treat you with a weird, distant reverence that makes honest conversation impossible, or they get dismissive, a thin mask for the envy burning underneath. You realize that neither of those reactions helps you build, so you adopt a new policy. Talk less, construct more. You watch the space between your reality and their perception grow into a canyon, and you don't reach out to close it. This brings us to the fourth rule of the game, and it is a brutal one. If you have less than $250,000, you are a gatherer. You are accumulating. But the second you cross that $250,000 line, the physics change. You're now an allocator. Most people fail because they try to use a hammer to do the work of a scalpel. They keep trying to accumulate long after they should have switched to allocation. And in doing so, they choke the very compounding force that would have catapulted them forward. Are you holding on to old habits that are actually slowing you down? Think about it. Then comes the day. You are 39. It is a Tuesday, a day so mundane it has no right to be significant. You are sitting in a meeting, listening to people argue about a project that lost its meaning to you half a year ago. You glance at your phone, refresh the brokerage app, and there it is. 7 figures. $1 million. You wait for the bells to ring or the sky to change color, but the world stays gray. There's a tiny, silent nod to yourself, a recognition that the math was right. But then a frost sets in. You do the math again. At a 4% withdrawal rate, $1 million pays you $40,000 a year. That isn't a throne, it's a life raft. It is not the finish line. It is just the moment the real game begins. You realize the identity crisis of the millionaire isn't about emptiness. It's the realization that you weren't hunting a number. You were hunting a feeling of validation that the number is incapable of giving. It's like climbing a mountain only to realize you've just reached the base camp of an even taller peak. The scale has reset. You start moving differently. You stop showing up to the rooms where everyone is wearing a lanyard and talking about their hustle. You skip the startup mixers and the finance panels where people brag about what they are building but never mention the blood and debt it cost them. Those rooms were oxygen when you were at a lower altitude, but now the air there is too thin. You find yourself in smaller, quieter spaces with people who don't need to perform. Occasionally, you run into someone who makes your $1 million look like the small change you leave in a tip jar. At $3,400,000, the final transformation occurs. Anxiety vanishes. Money is no longer a scorecard. It is a raw material, no different from the hours in your day or the focus in your mind. You stop checking the balance of your bank account and start obsessing over positioning. Where is the weight of your capital? What is the return profile of your life? What are you not seeing? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you're ready to see what's on the other side. Ownership changes your metabolic rate for risk. You start moving parts around not to survive the month, but to dominate the decade. You pull the trigger on a massive business restructure and recruit a partner who brings the kind of raw capacity you simply couldn't build fast enough alone. You're no longer just hiring hands. You are acquiring momentum. You cash out of a position with a clean $195,000 profit, but you don't spend it. You roll that capital immediately into a play with a much longer horizon and a completely different risk profile. The days of reacting to the market are over. You are positioning yourself like a chess player who is already 3 moves ahead of the board. The very texture of your work has transformed from a frantic scramble into a cold, calculated deployment. This is where the 5th rule takes hold of your life. At $1 million, you are essentially a student learning the vocabulary of what money is. But by the time you hit $3 million, you finally start to grasp what money actually does. The shift isn't about having more zeros in the bank. It is about the surgical quality of attention you apply to every move. Your business is now a $5.8 million revenue engine. Your portfolio has swelled to $2.1 million. And you're sitting on nearly $800,000 in equity across 3 separate properties. But the real proof isn't in the spreadsheet. It's in the fact that you can take a 17.5-day trip and go 7 full days without even glancing at your inbox. It wasn't a test of willpower or a digital detox rule. It was because the machine you built continued to hum in your absence. Nothing broke because the engine was designed for your invisibility. That kind of time wealth is the only currency that cannot be printed. Your systems hold while you're gone, or they don't. Yours held. Are you still sprinting, or have you started navigating? At some point, you stop obsessing over what you can earn and start focusing on where you want to be standing when the next economic cycle turns. You hit $8 million, and suddenly you are in rooms with people worth $35 million or $70 million. You study their psychological architecture the same way a beginner obsesses over hitting their first $10,000. It's not about what they own. It's about their internal clock. Their patience is longer. They aren't trying to win every single hand in the game. They're just making sure they are still sitting at the table when everyone else has lost their footing or cashed out. They don't talk about quarterly earnings. They talk in generational cycles. They describe their positioning, not their performance. It looks effortless because it was forged over decades you haven't lived yet. Well, you're not seeing that they are. By the time you reach $15 million, you are in the rooms that don't make it onto the news. These aren't the rooms with the red carpets or the cameras. These are the quiet spaces where a family office managing $700 million is looking at a co-investment right alongside you. They aren't doing you a favor by letting you in. They want your specific deal flow. They want your pattern recognition and your operational history. You are at the table because your capital and your judgment have become a legitimate utility to the giants already standing there. This is a different species of power entirely. It isn't status. It is utility at scale. This leads you to the sixth rule. At $10 million, your reputation becomes a sophisticated financial instrument. It starts earning returns that have nothing to do with your direct labor. Every room you enter either adds value to that instrument or devalues it. You start choosing your circles with the precision of a diamond cutter. You find yourself making a decision at $17 million that would have paralyzed you for weeks back when you were worth $400,000. When a company in your portfolio cuts 71 people, you don't let emotion cloud the data. You know the CEO personally. You've shared dinner, and you know the names of his kids. But you don't pick up the phone. You look at the operational logic, see that the move protects the margin profile, and you maintain your position. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss how this evolution finally ends. 2 quarters pass. That restructuring you backed? It pays off with a 24% surge in company value. But here is the strange part. You do not feel a rush of triumph. You do not feel much of anything at all. Instead, what you feel is a widening, silent canyon between your spreadsheet decisions and the actual human lives they impact. That lack of alarm? That is the only thing that actually rattles you in the quiet moments you try not to dwell on. By age 51, your net worth has climbed to $32 million. You set up the trusts. You launch a foundation that burns $700,000 every year just to stay operational. You are honest enough with yourself to admit that this foundation is effectively a skeleton key. It opens massive doors because of what your checkbook represents. You have officially retired from the theater of pretending. Why bother? Energy is the only asset in your life that does not compound over time, so you stop wasting it on social performances. The machine has entered its final phase. It no longer needs you to turn the gears. It just needs you to adjust the compass. You have transitioned from being the engine to being the pilot who points the ship and then steps back. By the time you reach $55 million, your internal clock has shifted again. You do not care about fiscal years or even decades. You are looking at the deep currents, credit cycles, demographic shifts, infrastructure evolution, and the tectonic movements of technological displacement. You are positioning yourself like a captain reading a storm 3 days before it hits the coast. When you are wrong, and it happens, a position might lag by 200 basis points. You rebalance the portfolio and move on. Your lifestyle does not flinch. If you had heard that sentence at 24, it would have sounded like another language. Now, it is the only logic that makes sense. The gap between those two versions of yourself is not measured in currency. And if you're being honest, it never was. You now hold equity in 13 different companies. Your phone calls are not to politicians, but to the people who actually design the policy those politicians eventually sign. You understand the nuance. You advise, you do not lobby. You have put $4 million into causes you actually care about, including some that offer zero tax advantages. At this height, giving is one of the only acts that still feels like a genuine choice rather than a mathematical inevitability. You guard that feeling of agency with everything you have. But at $85 million, you discover that isolation is not the same thing as being lonely. It is a much more surgical condition. It is having a life context that simply does not translate into any known language. The people who knew you back when you had $743 in a checking account are still around, but you have moved to a different continent of the mind. Your daily reality, secondary markets, regulatory carve-outs, dynasty trusts, and the multi-generational transfer of cognitive frameworks is a dialect that cannot be spoken at a normal dinner table. You are still the same person, but your coordinates have drifted off the edge of most maps. Here is the seventh rule. Once you pass $50 million, money stops being a scorecard for your worth and starts being a sonar for your reach. The number does not tell you who you are. It tells you how much of the world moves when you exhale. At 63, you are sitting at $93 million. Only 5 people on this planet know that exact number, and you have not worked a conventional day in 12 years. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to see how this narrative finally circles back to where it began. You might think a net worth of $93 million means the work has finally stopped, but that is a myth for the middle class. You are still working, just at a different frequency. Your mind no longer dwells on tasks. it dwells on structures. You are architecting legal, capital, and time frameworks that are designed to breathe long after you have stopped. You have signed documents that will only wake up when you are gone, creating a ghost governance that will dictate terms to people who haven't even been born yet. This is the true definition of generational wealth. It isn't a fat bank account handed to a child. It is a self-sustaining ecosystem that functions across decades without needing your hands on the controls. You have built a perpetual motion machine that runs on the logic you embedded into it, not the labor you provide today. Imagine a silent room with just 6 people. If you added up the capital sitting around that table, you would have enough to completely rewrite the economic fate of a mid-sized nation. You speak for exactly 7 minutes. You ask only 2 questions. Those 2 questions act like a gravity well, forcing the entire room to recalibrate its trajectory. You're gone before the lunch service even begins. In that room, no one mentions the beginning. No one knows. They see the power, but they don't see the origin. Meanwhile, in a city you haven't stepped foot in for years, a 24-year-old girl is standing at a grocery store checkout. She is reaching for the store brand coffee, her mind automatically running the same calculation she has performed 1,000 times before. She already knows the answer, but she checks her phone anyway. The number on the screen hasn't moved. $743. That number haunts her commute, her fitful sleep, and her morning routine. She is convinced this is a story about money. She believes that if she can just stack enough of it, the friction in her soul will finally resolve. What she doesn't know is that the machine is going to demand a price that isn't measured in dollars, but in distance. She doesn't see the long, silent, and irreversible canyon opening up between who she is today and who she must become to survive the climb. The transformation won't ask for her permission. It will happen one ruthless decision at a time, one version of herself at a time, until the person standing at the peak shares nothing but a name with the girl at the checkout counter. The machine never negotiates. It doesn't care if you are ready. It simply opens its doors every morning and swallows whoever shows up with enough patience and consistency to never flinch. The capital compounds. The decisions compound, but the distance and everything else you carry compounds right alongside them. It always starts at $743. It always has, and it always will. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a comment about your own journey, and ring the bell to stay tuned for more.